What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another video on the E82 Pro car. If you've seen the series up to this point, then you've seen where we've gotten on the car. The entire thing is stripped down to just a bare metal shell. We've gotten all the fab work done on the engine bay. It's spot welded. The strut towers are reinforced. We've pretty much made it as strong as we legally can. In the last video, we got the entire rear end cut off of this car. So we got that trimmed up, frame rails cut down. Still need to work on the tube rear, but that's going to be later on down the line. As you saw in the title for this video, we need to get our fuel cell mounted, at least build our cradle and do all the fabrication work so that when it's all done, we can just drop it right in and go. Now for the fuel cell itself, our boys over at Jack's Fab Shop hooked us up with an 8-gallon ATL cell. Now we went with an 8-gallon unit mainly for the placement that we're going to be putting this, which I'll discuss in just a minute. This is ATL's aluminum container that has the top hat with the drop-in fuel pumps. Now this tank specifically is off another Pro car from last year. It was only used for maybe 2 months before that car got sold. Has their black box drop-in container inside of it. And the idea of that is it's its own little mini container that the fuel pumps sit in, and it has trap doors that allow fuel to come in but not out. So it prevents all the sloshing that's surrounding your pumps, and you don't starve them at all and possibly hurt the engine. So that is in here is for a dual pump unit, and like I said, those sit inside of that black box. So it's not as efficient as a surge tank, but it still should prevent all of our sloshing while keeping our fuel system very simple and not having to do a bunch of extra stuff. The car this was in, the guy had 0 sloshing issues, which is nice. We're gonna just give this a try. If I have to add a surge tank down the line, I will, but I prefer to keep everything nice, simple, basic, all mechanical, just so there's less maintenance and possible things to fail on the vehicle. So we're going to be installing this and getting it in its location in the car today. Now for the location, I really have 2 different options as to where I can put this fuel cell to distribute the weight how I want it to be. Let me go ahead and show you where our 2 options are and what we're going to go with. Alright, so in this car, even though it is just an 8-gallon unit, it's still fairly decent size. I think it's about 12.5 by 20.5, so it's a decent little rectangle. And our options are to either A, put it in the rear of the car, right here behind the diff, which is a nice location. A lot of guys put their fuel cells back here in their drift cars. You would obviously have to build the crash structure around it and make sure that it's safe so it doesn't get damaged. Now the other location is to put it right here on the passenger side of the rear seat. Now this is good for a couple reasons, not only for weight distribution. If I'm up here in the front left, we want to try and balance out the weight to get it over to the right side of the car and further back as possible. When you have the fuel cell in the very back of the car, I feel like it creates like a pendulum effect when you're transitioning. It makes it a little more lazy. It's not much, we're talking 80 pounds, but everything counts, especially once you throw it behind the axles and behind the rear suspension. You'll feel that weight when you're driving. Now these cars specifically make a ton of mechanical grip. There's some guys that are in pro with the car now. There's guys all over the country that I've been FaceTiming with and talking with on Instagram, and a lot of them can't take enough grip out of these cars to really make them work properly. A lot of guys who even have a WiseFab rear are taking that WiseFab out and just going with adjustable arms just for the mere fact it's too much grip. So with that being said, my whole focus on this car is to keep all the weight inside the cab, in front of the axles. So we're going to be mounting it over here in this passenger spot. Now, I can just throw it on top here, build a cradle, but I feel like that's kind of ugly. I feel like that keeps the weight a little bit up. So what we're gonna do is cut out a section out of that back seat so we can recess the tank down through the floor. That will keep it nice and clean, and it's a good solid spot to where we can just have a nice fill neck right up at the window. So that's what we're gonna do. Let's go ahead and figure out where we wanna put this thing, where we're gonna cut it up, and let's just get right to it. So before we go ahead and just cut a big hole and drop this thing in here, there's a couple things that we need to keep in mind. One is going to be our subframe mount. So I already know this is our frame rail right here. I've been looking at the side, kind of lining it up, and the subframe mount itself falls roughly in this area here. So I already know, regardless, I'm not going to be cutting into the frame rail. So that means I'm going to have the box right here to the side. Now in a perfect world, I would really like to have this box not protrude out through the front of these rear seats. But if I was to do that, it kind of screws us in the back, because if I'm going to be cutting this all the way back into this seat, it's going to be landing on the subframe and be in the way of everything. So I'm going to have to cut the face of this out, which is legal. It's totally fine. I'm just going to be cutting minimal, and it's probably going to be sticking out to at least here. So we got 2.5, 3 inches right here. Not a big deal. It's going to be dropped nice and low to keep it as low as possible, which is the second thing that we need to keep in mind as well. Our distance going back and forth, how far it's going to need to be. So to start, I need to pull the measurement on the width of this box, which is 12.5 inches. I already have it marked out here. If I'm in this exact spot, I will clear the frame rail as well as the trans tunnel. It'll drop me right where I need to be. If I can get it as low as this, so I have this lip pretty much level with this surface, that would be amazing. If it ends up being, you know, 2 inches above, just so we can clear all the way around, then that's totally fine. So what I'll do for now, start right here, cut out a little section, and we'll just start sliding this thing back so we can get it tucked as low and far back as possible. Now that I got a section of it cut out, you can start to see what I'm talking about, how it's going to be dropping down and sliding back. All right, so you see how it's looking right now, where we're hitting. Still need to take it further back and a lot further down, but I'm trying to take as minimal as possible, so I'm just gonna inch this a little bit at a time, get it down and all the way back to where I'm happy. So I've got it about this far right now, and I wanna check a couple things. First thing being, how much room coming back do I have before I hit the subframe? Here's the subframe mount, and here is the ear of the subframe. Everything straight across and forward is free game. So as far as coming back, I can come back all the way to this point. So I have tons of room there. And as far as coming down, this is how we're looking right now. So I have a lot of room coming down, pretty much to the bottom of this platform right here. So I think I'll take it probably to the lip of this, maybe have it rest on that lip. Let's just see where it goes. All right, so I got the depth. It is now resting on the platform here. It perfectly clears the trans tunnel, which is exactly what I wanted, right beside it. And both sides are resting flat. So now it's just a matter of getting this pushed back as far as we can. But I'm gonna go grab my spare subframe and bolt that up into the chassis, because I really wanna be sure that I don't cut too much or make this permanent without physically seeing it's gonna work. So let's go grab that spare subframe, slap it in real quick, and then we'll start tucking this thing back as close as we can. All right, then now that we're starting to get closer back, you can see where we're at. We probably have maybe 2.5, 3 inches back that we can go until we start to get in the way of the subframe. And we got to keep this in mind as well for that bolt. All right, the hole is cut for the fuel cell. I have it in the position that I want it in right now. So now I need to get kind of creative and decide how I'm going to make the cradle to hold this in. I really originally wanted a steel container that I could have just welded all the way around, and my fitment's good enough to do that. But this one's aluminum. I talked to ATL, and they tried to find me a scratch and dent unit that they could send me that wasn't powder coated, but they didn't have something, and I don't want to just buy a new container when I have one that works. So first thing I need to do is just make our square for the top cradle. But I also need to keep in mind the roll cage, right? That roll cage is going to be almost all the way back, and I've been taking measurements My cross horizontal tube that goes from that corner down to this corner is going to just clear this by just enough. But that also means I cannot take this fuel cell up and out. It is going to have to slide out the front if I ever want to remove it. So what I'm going to do, build a permanent cradle from this point back all the way around, sheet all the sides. This front piece is going to be removable. I'll probably end up capping and welding a nut on the ends of each of these tubes, have them come out to here, cap them, and then have a piece that comes across here that's sheeted around for the firewall that is all bolt-on and removable. So then in the future, I can undo this face of this, slide this cell forward and out, and it can come out. Because if I weld this permanently all the way around, I'm gonna have to cut the cradle and all the firewall and everything to even try and remove this cell. So I think that's our best plan of action. I'm gonna start building up the U shape that I'm gonna put at the top, and we'll go from there. So I got two pieces cut to the length that I want, and the cell already fit perfectly in here. So what I ended up doing was getting the width of this and adding maybe like a 1/16 or a 32nd of an inch just to have a little wiggle room, cut it out, so now it sits flush at the height that I want it. So I'm gonna get that notched at the right angle, and then we're gonna cut this side out and do the same thing, get this other piece in so it's flush as well as shaped to the corner so we can get everything flush and welded in. So I've been shaving this away a little bit at a time to get this to sit flush here, which I'm almost there. Okay, so here's one. It's level. I got this corner notched right around this frame rail so it has full contact and can weld it in. I need to go ahead and just cut this one at the right angle to match this as well, and then we can get this all welded in. And then I'm going to run a bar on the back side right here to connect this. And like I was saying, I'm going to end up cutting this back flush, capping it and welding a nut, and then creating a front piece that is removable. Alright, so I got the main top part of the cradle all welded in, all the way around as best as I could. Doesn't look too shabby. Some parts got a little ugly, but it is what it is. My camera just died, but I just got this vertical piece tacked in, and now I'm going to tack in this lower brace as well. Alright, so I got the cage in all the way around. I had to shave down a lot of the weld so it could sit flush again. Pops right into place, nice and level, really has no wobble. Just barely doesn't touch. Alright, so I used this orange template piece that you can push into the corner and made this, and this guy. It's gonna sit in there just like that. Okay, so I got that one little piece in. I didn't film it because I was just trying to experiment and see what worked best. Turned out pretty good. Now we need to make a big one for that side, for the top, to fill that side over there, and the same thing with that hole. Alright, so I got both of these sides done. I really wanted just to do these little ones for practice, but I'd show you guys how I do the rest of them. It's not the prettiest thing in the world, but at least the top side looks the best. We'll test fit the piece that we cut. A couple little gaps, but they're small. It's easy to fill with the MIG. So that's how it's gonna look. It's nothing crazy, but it'll work. And we'll take this square and we're gonna weld it on the face of these two guys here. And that's where it's gonna bolt on and off. Okay, so real time, it had been a couple days. I had to go up to Formula Drift. I'm spotting for my buddy DJ Stubstead, who's in Prospect this year. But I'm back and I'm working on finishing up the fuel cell. Like I kind of told you guys, I'm making a removable faceplate. So I made this removable bar. I went ahead, welded on some weld nuts inside of this and just bolted it through. So now I'm making a template here out of sheeting that's gonna wrap around this face and just encapsulate the entire fuel cell. I went ahead and already made the template for the front of it. That's gonna bend to the bottom, which is this guy here. I'm gonna work on making the sides as well. So let me get this cut out and we'll fit it up in the car and I'll show you guys kind of where I'm at. So it's gonna be something like this. Got it all welded up. That covers one side. What I will probably do is, just so this doesn't rattle when it's all put together, is I'll probably cut the perimeter of this a bit shorter and put some edge guard or some rubber around it, just so it makes a nice seal and doesn't rattle all the time. But as you can see, it already makes a pretty nice seal. There's a little bit of a gap here, but honestly, for what it is, that is great for a firewall. So this is how it's gonna look all said and done. Sorry about the background noise. It is hot and humid in here, so I got the fan going. The entire thing is sealed in minus that side. So what I need to do is the same thing I did on the other side. Cut this flush, make me a little plate to fill this area, call it a day. All right, so here is the piece, all boxed in. See how it fits up. Okay, so off camera, I went ahead and attached all of these rib nuts around the whole thing to hold the lid and everything down on the fuel cell. And what I did was drill a hole to fit the rib nut and then used a much larger head to taper it so it sat flush and it didn't elevate the fuel cell at all, and it was still sitting nice and flush and smooth to the cradle. Okay, so I have the entire fuel cell completely sealed off all the way around. The only thing that I need to do from here is really decide if I want to do a firewall at the back of the main hoop and completely seal off the back of the cab. If I do that, then I don't need to make any other firewalls, but I don't like the feeling of just being completely sealed off behind my head. So what I think I would like to do is make like a hood, a firewall that just kind of encapsulates the fuel cell, and then make a separate firewall here to seal off the back of the car, the radiator, and all that as well. So I gotta decide really what I want to do. Sorry again, I have the fan going in the background. It is super humid today, but at least this part is built. This is all the way done. I'm really happy with how it turned out. I left a good bit of a gap around here. I'll probably actually cut all of that back and put some like edge guard, like some rubber around the edges of that, just so it doesn't vibrate like crazy when I'm driving the car or idling. But I can do that after the fact, after it's all painted and done. So all right guys, so as you saw, we got the fuel cell all painted, all the rib nuts are installed. I put edge guard around the entire perimeter of this removable plate. Turned out really nice. I'm very happy with how it looks. So from this point, we need to move to the rear of the car and kind of shift focus back there. We need to figure out our rear radiator, the quick change cover, where our battery is going to be mounted, really just all the fine details on how we're going to set up the back of the car so we can just continue getting all the fab work done before we get it painted. So I hope you guys are enjoying these videos. Leave a comment down below, good or bad, or if there's anything to critique that I can improve on, please let me know. Thank you guys for watching this one, and I'll see you on the next one. Later.